Okay, on my last two videos, I may have not said everything in perfect order, but the overall idea is still there. Now, what I would like to talk about was when I was around 15 with my brother Bucky in the basement. Now, as we were getting on our bikes, Chris was really upset about the mess that I left upstairs in the living room, and he came down. And we went on having a conversation back and forth with insults. And I continuously poked at him, saying, "What you gonna do about it? Punish me? What are you gonna do? Huh? Huh?" And you know what he did? He actually grabbed my throat and started to squeeze like he was choking me. He immediately released after about 7 seconds, but my brother Bucky was a witness to it. And if you were to ask Chris if this is true, he'll probably say yes if he remembers. I know his memory is not nearly as good as mine when it comes to these subjects, which is one of the sad facts, is because they're so careless in their actions that they easily forget about very important events, especially when they really matter to me. Like, I never asked them for anything except for things on my birthday or holidays, like what those things are expected for those years. But when it comes to things that really mattered the most, they completely neglected and abandoned that aspect of my life. For instance, for most people, when they hit their 16th birthday or around that time, they're taught how to drive and get a driver's license 2 years later. But Kathryn and Chris never did this. They never taught me how to drive. They just completely neglected those parts of my life, those things that should have been very important. Another thing that a lot of parents do is give their kids cell phones so they could stay more interconnected with them and the world. Kathryn and Chris never did this because they, at the time, think that I'm a megalomaniac, I guess, which was not true. I was just really upset and angry towards them because of all these things they've done. And I have every right to be angry and pissed off. I've never wronged them directly, except tearing some holes into their wall, but I've always ended up having to pay it out of my own money. And when one day when I was walking home from work, it was downpouring really hard. I was actually going into hypothermia because I wasn't actually properly addressed. And yes, that is a real thing, and you can catch hypothermia in even daylight times if the right circumstances are there. And I couldn't get into the house because Kathryn neglected to switch out the batteries to the garage door, and I was completely locked out. I even went down to the nearest neighbor's, which was about a quarter mile running so I could keep warm. She wasn't there, so I had to end up run back, and eventually I kicked the basement door down in the back. The thing was super rotted away. I mean, it is exposed constantly to water over several years. It was easy to kick in. Anyway, after I got warm, Kathryn came home and came up the stairs saying, "What the hell did you do to the door?" And I said to her, "I kicked it in." And she said, "Why'd you do that?" And I told her it was really pouring rain and I was really, really cold. And she didn't care about that. She was just screaming at me because I kicked the door down. And I ended up having to pay $1,769 for a replacement for the door. And then they made me paint it. And then they made me varnish it. And then they made me install the door that's now currently in their basement. All because I was freezing cold. They didn't give a shit. They were just pissed off at me. And they asked me, "Devin, why don't you like us? We're great people. We do everything physically possible for you. We feed you, we clothe you, we give you a roof over your head. Why don't you like us?" Well, now you know. To me, you're just a horrible individuals who on the surface, you go about your life doing this pretend mask thing where you get along with everyone, talk about how you're going to save the world through giving it peace like a hippie who does a lot of weed. Anyway, those ideas are non-realistic because peace for one person doesn't mean it's peace for another, and will conject to their idea of peace. Like two opposing religions, for instance. Their idea of peace and prosperity is completely different from another, but overall their roots are the same. And yet they kill each other all because of a God that doesn't even do anything for mankind. In fact, I could personally do better. Not kidding. I can fucking do better than God. First off, I would do is clean up the oceans after raising man from the earth in the beginning, because that's what you do when you're a creator. You take care of your creation. You don't abandon and neglect them. Two, I would turn the Sahara and all the deserts of the world into tropical paradises for man, because I love them. And three, I'd terraform Mars and Venus to be habitable worlds for man, instead of being barren wastelands inhospitable to life. Instead of having a remaining silence, saying nothing to man. Because that's not love. That is not love. When you love something, when you truly care about it, you give it your all. You show it how to live. That is what love is. God shows nothing like that. In fact, throughout history, God has killed more human beings than the worst serial killers, rapists, tyrants of mankind throughout history. And people who believe in that stuff are in their own right delusional, because they believe in a better future but don't actually make a better future. That's the irony of religion, is that it's one load of shit. I also look at the beauty that's in it and has some nagging pull on it, but then I realize that those nagging pulls are nothing more than basic human wants and feelings. To be loved, to be cared after, to be shown the way. But no, a book doesn't do those things for you. That's an illusion. You need to make that a reality, not read it in a book. And that is the true miracle. Also, Kathryn and Chris never showed me this type of love, the type of love that anyone should expect from a parent. They completely neglected the most important aspects of my entire life.